What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Real Ones Canes podcast. I'm the Beast, Brian London. Joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, Brandon O'Doy. And Brandon, we are coming off a big win for the University of Miami, 48-33 over Texas A&M at Hard Rock Stadium. And coming into this one, we had a lot of questions about how this one was going to go down, but it went down with a Miami victory.
It definitely did, and to my pleasant surprise, you had a scenario where the Miami Hurricanes were the most physical team on the football field, and that's what you want to see. And you didn't expect that with the SEC bodies, especially the way that Jimbo Fisher and this Texas A&M team have been recruiting. But Miami's been recruiting very well, especially as of late, and those transfer portal additions, especially some of the ones in the defensive backfield, namely Jaden Davis, paid off really, really big for the Miami Hurricanes. Some unfortunate news surrounding some injuries, but you got out of that one with the win, and you had to have it.
Speaking of injuries, I watched Mario Cristobal's press conference on Monday and watched Shannon Dawson and Lance Guidry, and no word on injuries. We're just not going to talk about injuries. We're just going to say, hey, we're working on it. The trainers are working on it. So we have no idea. They four guys went down in the game, I think, plus Cam Kitchens. My numbers might be off, but I know we got some defensive issues. Mesidor went down. Nigel Kelly went down. Fletcher went down. I'm trying to think of the fourth. Branson Dean went down. And that's some crucial talent, especially on the defensive side. And it's a short week. The only good saving grace, and I don't like to demean these, HBCU schools that come down here and give it their all. But the good saving grace for the University of Miami is they're not playing Florida State this week.
Yeah, you don't have the Seminoles on the schedule this week. You've got Bethune-Cookman. They've got a first-year head coach, and they've got a brand-new staff. But they've got some experience in the coaching staff. This will not be a gimme game. But nevertheless, it's expected to be a very sure victory for the Hurricanes, and much needed at the time where you got some, concerns injury-wise, Beast, with regard to this Hurricane team, particularly along the defensive line. And so you're going to need this week, a short week, and you're going to need at Temple to be relatively easy games because you need to get some guys back from injury. I'm told that the Cam Kitchens injury is not something to be super concerned about. There's very good optimism in the program that, he's going to come back within a reasonable period of time. And like I said, you're not going to take any chances with him this week in a short week against Bethune-Cookman. I don't even think you see him against Temple. And so you've got some things to kind of be excited about based on the depth that you have shown. You're going to need that depth because I wouldn't put anybody out there that doesn't need to be out there on Thursday night.
You talk about Cam Kitchens, and every single guy that we have talked to in the last few weeks since the season started, especially on defense, has just talked about the leadership that he provides. He is unequivocally the leader of this team. And I don't think he's the biggest vocal guy. I think he does it by example, and they lead from him. Always gotta love when the UPS guy decides to show up while we're doing the podcast.
He's a dog, kind of like what we're hearing in the background there at, your house, Beast. This is a guy that goes out, shows it on the field. He's a quiet example type guy. Just watch me, do as I do, not necessarily do as I say. But we talked to him at Media Day. He's growing in his sort of loquaciousness and his ability to kind of step forward as a leader. But when he went down, you saw the entire team was very anxious to make sure that nothing was wrong with them. It's different when you're playing with a guy that already has his name in the rafters there in the indoor practice facility at the University of Miami because he's an All-American. So, that kind of brings a special cachet, and he's earned the right to sort of be that unquestionable leader on this team, especially on defense. But shout out to, James Williams and the other guys on this Miami Hurricane team say, fine, we got you. We're going to pick up the slack. And I think that's one of the storylines going into this week. Not so much how much Miami wins by or if they will win. They'll obviously beat Bethune-Cookman. but who steps up as leaders and who, given this opportunity for extra playing time, establishes themselves, because this is college football. There are a lot of games that are played. You need depth. Everybody's not going to feel amazing throughout the length of the season. And that's been the problem in the past, Beast. Last year, we went through 3 quarterbacks. You know what I mean? And you hope nothing happens to Van Dyke. But every position has to show that it can still be elite or really good or good when the person in front of them goes down. And so now the defensive line has been completely under attack. Branson Dean, Mesidor. And so these guys who are behind now have opportunities to show this coaching staff what they can do, especially against inferior talent.
I just want to go back to the Texas A&M game for 1 second. What in your mind was 1 or 2 things that happened in that game or that you saw in that game that surprised you, that helped lead them to victory?
There were a lot of things. First of all, they didn't panic when they got down and started making mistakes. It wasn't MTSU again with the pick 6, and this team just completely goes into a tank at home. There seemed to be more trust in teammates. Hey, we're down. Secondly, they made mistakes and still found a way to win. Typically, if Miami has that many turnovers and that many bonehead plays, they can never get out of their own way, and the game would basically be over. They had muff punts, blocked kicks, just bad plays all around, lack of protection on, the offensive line, and still found ways to make explosive plays. Then people stepped up. Xavier Restrepo had the best game of his 4-year career. You know what I mean? We really hadn't seen that. It's been teased, but he finally stepped up and showed that, he can be electric. I told you, we need to find playmakers. I think we know who they are. You've got, Jacoby George, even though he had mistakes, he atoned. 2 touchdown performance from him. And Kobe Young was consistently good. Now we see when he's not in the game, that kind of establishes some weaknesses there for this Hurricane team. But when he went out, then Horton comes in and took advantage of a substitution at defensive back, and he scores a touchdown and limited playing time. And so now you've established depth at the wide receiver position. TVD, which I still think is a system guy, but that system just happens to be the system that Miami is running. They're running this air raid, get the ball out, move the ball around the field, throw to the open spot type of offense, and it's working. And there's creativity. Shannon Dawson obviously have a mind for offense, and he showed his creativity, especially down on the goal line in Miami's first score. And so you have a lot of things that you're impressed by. You're impressed by the offensive creativity, the play calling. You're impressed by the fact that this team didn't get down on themselves when things weren't going right. You're impressed by the fact that they played a very less than perfect game and still found a way to make this game not even really close, especially toward the second half. And then they were physical. The depth was cool. It was nice to see, Lance Guidry get after the ball with those, corner blitzes from Daryl Porter and Wesley Bassett, coming from the linebacker position. There was a lot more sure tackling. And the biggest surprise for me was James Williams, number 20, finally playing like the 5-star talent that he is. Listen, if he plays like this is going to be rough. When Kitchens comes back and he's playing the way he's playing, these are the Miami defenses of old, these bullies running around. You don't want to catch the ball in the middle of traffic. These guys are going to put you on your back. They're going to talk some trash to you. And I ain't ready to put on my orange and green glasses yet, but I do like a lot of the things that I saw. But there were mistakes, and the mistakes have to be cleaned up, because if you make those kind of mistakes on the road at FSU, you make those kind of mistakes against Clemson, you make those kind of mistakes on the road at UNC, you will not win football games. And those are just the facts.
Speaking of the facts, I think the surprising thing to me in that game against Texas A&M is, in previewing Texas A&M and watching their previous game against New Mexico State, I really thought that defense for Texas A&M was going to have more hurries, more rushes, maybe more sacks against Tyler Van Dyke. But that offensive line, once again, came through for TVD and really did a good job of keeping him upright. It is 1,000% better than what we saw last year. And I think, you talked about TVD and he's in the right system, but I think the biggest thing is, one, he's healthy, except for whatever finger issue he's got going on, but he doesn't have the shoulder issue that he had last year.
Except for that big old black thing that's on his finger.
The prosthesis or whatever Mario was talking about. And then, but the biggest thing is he's got protection. So he's able, not only is he able to stay upright, but he's able to go through his progressions, take his time, and make the right throw.
And I think that's the difference between week 1 and week 2. There's some throws he just didn't take in week 1 that were right there. And in week 2, you saw him take a few more chances, trust his receivers, and get the ball out. And that's what he's being tasked to do. He's not being tasked to be a Lamar Jackson and run around. He's being tasked to get and distribute the ball. Most of the time, he's getting and hooking up with his roommate, his friend, his best friend, possibly, and Xavier Restrepo. And it was just fun to watch, Beast. It was just fun to see this Hurricane team looking like a team that, had a little bit of juice, was well coached. The coaching staff needs to take a bow. They coached well during that football game. I'm not saying what they're going to do. I'm not extending it down the line. I'm not ready to say, put us in the CFB. I'm saying one game, one very difficult game on your schedule, one game you had to win to kind of show people that you're legit and should be taken serious, and almost the third watch game of the entire weekend behind Colorado, Nebraska, and Texas, Alabama, which shows you how strong the brand is. At the end of the day, the University of Miami did what they needed to do. And I have to say, I'm excited about this team right now.
For me, it's good to see that this team can win in a track meet kind of game. I mean, you go look at the yardage. Miami, Texas A&M were about equal. I mean, all the numbers, Texas A&M actually had the edge. The biggest difference is Miami got chunk plays and got into the end zone when they had to. Texas A&M didn't. So that was a big key. But going forward this week and then at Temple, it's going to be a couple of weeks where hopefully they can work out the kinks, work on all the mistakes that they've seen in the first 2 weeks, get things going, get things cranking as we head on towards the rest of the season.
One thing that has to get worked on, that run game. The absence of Mark Fletcher. Henry Parrish had one really good run and set up a lot of scoring. But I can tell you, the difference between no Fletcher with only Parrish and Don Chaney, the run game, there's a lot to like, but hopefully we can restore some confidence in the run game in these next couple of weeks.
And let's not forget, yes, Cam McCormick had a catch, but he's basically a blocker. You're losing, you don't have that tight end aspect to this passing offense.
Tight end's been inexistent. Who tight end you where? I mean,
no, I know, but I mean, you got Arroyo and Skinner that are not able to be a part of the offense right now for one reason or the other. So just imagine if you get one of those guys involved, what this offense could do.
I don't want to sell Dawson short. He's very quickly gaining confidence with me. But let's say he's holding some things back and has some tight end packages and some things we haven't seen. Every one of these receivers in this offense is a threat. Every one of these guys can make plays. And listen, when they're not making plays in this offense, then you have a guy like Brashad who takes the kickoff back and really, kind of juices the team up. And that's why he was recruited. Fast kid. He didn't play a lot of receiver. I know this over the course of his career. He's been mostly a running back. He kind of had to convert to receiver in college. So, but one thing he's done well is run with the ball in his hands. And so you saw that on that kickoff. So it's just getting guys who know how to play football in the right positions to take advantage. Will we see more tight end play and the dynamic of that ability on this team down the line? I think we will, but I don't think this entire offense has been presented, and I'm actually okay with that.
Yeah, totally. So there's no one I think we should talk to more about the state of this team than the guy that runs thestateoftheu.com, and that's Cam Underwood. He will join us next. It's the Real Ones Canes podcast with the Beast and Brandon O'Doy. Follow us on X at Real Ones Canes. Go check out the YouTube channel. Go download the podcast wherever you get podcasts. Cam Underwood from stateoftheu.com joins us right after this. Canes fans, the Real Ones Canes podcast is brought to you by Closure Investigative Agency, the premier private investigative firm in Florida. They're the most aggressive PI firm in South Florida. Ulises and his crew will get you the information you need and leave no stone unturned. They've been doing it for more than 2 decades, and there is no one else you should trust to find you the truth. Are you worried about a cheating spouse? Do you have a custody issue? you? Do you need a thorough background check done of a potential employee? Need an insurance or legal investigation done? Or even an international investigation that needs to happen? Closure Investigative Agency has you covered. Call Ulises and his staff right now at 844-403-2550. That's 844-403-2550. Or email them at info@ciagency.com. And follow them on X at CIAPIFL. That's CIAPIFL. And find them on the web at ciagency.net. Closure Investigative Agency, sponsoring the Real Ones Canes podcast. All right, we're back here in the Real Ones Canes podcast. Go download the show wherever you get your podcasts. Like, subscribe, make really great comments that make myself and Brandon feel like superstars. That would really be great. Follow us on X at Real Ones Canes. Now bringing in a guy that knows a lot about this program. He does a great job as the managing editor for stateoftheu.com. You can follow him on X at Underwood Sports. Cam Underwood, welcome to the show.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? Thanks for having me.
So we just recapped the Texas A&M game, and I asked Brandon this question. I'm going to ask it to you. What was the one or two things you saw from the Miami Hurricanes team in that game that surprised you?
At first, I want to say the resiliency. This is a program that has folded in tough situations for 20 years. And, so a little inside baseball. Brandon, Brian, and myself, Beast and myself, all sit in the same row in the press box, right? So we all just talk to each other throughout the game, and it's a community. Like all the journalists, we all talk to each other. And when it got to 10-0, I turned to Brandon and I said, "Oh boy," I said, "This is not going to be good," because in the past 15 years, right? What happens when Miami goes down 10-0 early with errors? 3 and out, punt, touchdown the other team. It's 17-0 halfway through the first quarter. Heads are down. Tyler Van Dyke even said it after the game. He said, "Look, in the last year, that team quit at 10-0. And I was very surprised that in that spot, walked down the field, got a touchdown, and said, "Oh, okay." Got down 17-7, came back, walked down, got a touchdown, and said, "Okay, whoa. This was a team that had a glass jaw. I mean, if you had a jab slip through, it was night-night. They went to sleep." This team took a couple of haymakers of their own making. Look, you gave Texas A&M 2 touchdown drives that combined covered fewer than 25 yards of the field, right? It was a 9-yard and a 14-yard or 15-yard touchdown drives. 2 different drives, right? There's teams that this program of the Miami Hurricanes does not or has not bounced back from negative situations like that pretty much ever in the last 20 years. So seeing that was a really, really great change in the culture and just the mental fortitude of the team. So that was the first thing. And then Tyler Van Dyke, looking like Tyler Van Dyke. Look, this is a kid who, came in 2 years ago after De'Aaron King blew out his knee, after Jake Garcia broke his ankle. Because if you don't remember, in that Central Connecticut game, he was the 3rd quarterback in. Go look it up on the box score and the participation report. I said it at the time because I thought Jake Garcia was going to be the guy. And then Tyler Van Dyke put on that show in 21. And then even today, before the game, I looked down, my 20/20 vision. Yes, that's a flex because everybody was like Brandon has to use his binoculars, old man. Anyways.
Hey, man, I just got those.
The shots are fired.
And look, he's only a week older than I am, so that's a personal jab and a good friend of mine.
A very important week.
Exactly. But I looked down and I saw the black wrap that Tyler had on his index finger. I said his finger, he has something on his finger. I don't know if it's 2 of them wrapped together, and everybody's like, "How do you say it?" I'm like, "It's jet black on his finger. You can't miss it." And then, Brandon was like, "Okay, here it goes." When he misses throws and everything, and that's going to be the excuse. And he threw that ball to Isaiah Horton, and it took off from there. That was really kind of incredible. So I will say that's the other takeaway from the game that I have.
Cam, our boy Brandon has mentioned that he thinks Tyler Van Dyke is a system quarterback. Now,
Standing on that.
in the previous segment, he's like, well, it just so happens that Shannon Dawson runs the system that he fits in. But also so did Rhett Lashley. So is it he's a system quarterback, or maybe last year he was just hurt, didn't get great coaching, and didn't have the offensive line that he has now?
A little bit of both, honestly. You know, he was running for his life last year. He should not have played the rest of the season after he got injured in the shoulder. Like, you know, when he got tackled on that shoulder, that was at Hard Rock. We all saw it, and like you could hear it from the stands go, ooh, like he got tackled on his throwing shoulder. And, you know, in the world of sports medicine, elbows and knees used to end careers, but now you can come back from those Tommy John surgery for a pitcher, or, you know, you blow your ACL out or something. You know, fine, you get surgery, you come back. Shoulders and hips, those still in careers, just like they did for Bo Jackson. So seeing that last year, I was like, this is a guy who can't throw the ball, you know, and the offense did him no favors. The offensive line was atrocious. So he's running for his life, and we know that that's not his skill set. And yeah, you go back to a new coordinator who runs, you know, some veer and shoot, some vertical passing concepts that he likes. And when they ran that stutter go to Isaiah Horton, they were just like, look, let it rip, man. You know, just like throw it vertical. This is what you do best. And we're going to find ways to get that. Even, you know, and you look at that throw, you look at the beautiful dime he dropped up the left sideline to Xavier Restrepo right before the half. That was an incredible throw. Even the touchdown that wasn't on that double move post route to Jacoby George, that ball was pinpoint perfect. And you're seeing, okay, if we're giving this guy some time to throw the ball down the field, he's really, really good at it. And if that's the system, you know, married with the skill set, I'm with it. But yeah, last year was by far and away the aberration. And if you can't believe that, look at the struggling of Maryland, even through the spring game and through the beginning of the season with Josh Gaddis as their offensive coordinator now. I mean, one of these things is not like the other, and unfortunately that's Gaddis. But, you know, with Shannon Dawson, I think that we have something. We're going to be cooking with fish grease here.
Yeah, no, I've been the biggest defender of what we had offensively last year, and I'm even, you know, starting to come around like, yeah, this is way better. This is not what we had last year. There are some improving factors, though. That offensive line has been rebuilt. Credit to Mario Cristobal and Alex Maribal and all those guys. And that helps, you know, because TVD ain't a run for your life type of quarterback. Him not being injured is a big deal. But you talked about resiliency, and that's something that I said. I said the almost exact same thing. We've had these conversations. To me, Cam, did we learn enough about this team to have more confidence in our initial projections, or is there still more to prove? Because I went back and looked at the defensive backfield for Texas A&M, and they were atrocious.
Ooh,
and
so
but it's like, okay, it's kind of like, is this team have as many weapons as we saw offensively in the past game, or are there concerns like potentially the run game, the health of Mark Fletcher, what's going to happen on the defensive line? How much do we really take away from this win? And you know, as someone who's covered this team for a while, like you said, historically some things were reversed. This team would have normally folded, so that was new. But how much? I mean, basically the hype meter. How much are you turning that up?
I'm turning it up at least one win. Like, because this, pretty much everybody had this penciled or penned or etched in stone as a loss, right? So you come in and you win this game, and this game was not as close as the score would indicate. This game was a blowout, right? Miami ended on a 41-16 run without spotting them. 2 touchdowns and a couple. I mean, like, even other scoring drives that they had, garbage time and like some other thing, like, this is a blowout. This is a 4 or 5 touchdown win. Like, Miami dominated Texas A&M here. And that in and of itself, I think, is at least worth one win on whatever you had projected coming into the season. Personally, I was 7-5. That means I'm already floored 8-4. And then if you look forward, Clemson's looking funny in the light. North Carolina went to the buzzer again in overtime with Appalachian State, again for the second year in a row. Florida State looks pretty good, but, hey, if Miami continues to make steps forward, I'm not even going to have that as a surefire loss. That's all I'm going to say, because that game is different. And it's even been when teams are bad that they've been competitive is my point, Beast. I see you trying to weigh me down. But my point is this. I'm turning the hype meter up one click. No more, no less. And if we continue to play, then okay, we can turn the volume up even further. But for me right now, after this one game in the second week of the season, I'm turning it up one click.
All right, you just saved it for me, probably blowing blood vessels in my neck, coming back at you with the one click. Okay, I thought you were gonna go there. You didn't go there.
No.
Yeah, so we're okay.
Yeah,
but listen. Regardless of what you think is going to happen the rest of the year, based on a 2-game sample, I just feel like the coaching is better, the talent is better, and the team is better than 5-7. And Tyler Van Dyke said it right after the game. He said, that is not happening again. This team will not be 5-7.
I love it. And you had to have leaders who come out and make clear declarative statements like that. And on all phases and all sides, I agree with you. The talent is better. The coaching is better. The team as a whole is better. And the talent is being used better. You're not having the square peg round hole disconnect of, we're going to make Tyler Van Dyke run around. We're going to not have a good offensive line and run power run, or try to run power run, because other teams are just going to push us backwards like we did last year with Josh Gaddis. We did not have those guys to do that. We did not have the best offensive line in the country and 3 230-pound running backs to hammer people, but we're running offense in that way. That was the disconnect. Now we have better talent and we're using it in better, smarter, more aligned ways to their athletic ability, and I love that.
This question's actually, I want you two to both get involved here, because this is not my area of expertise. But it would seem like the way that Mario reorganized the staff, where he moves a couple of guys that were coaches now to being more on the recruiting front, and it seems like that recruiting apparatus of all the analysts and recruiting coordinators and all the guys that he's got back there, that has made a solid difference. I don't cover it enough to really have proof of that, or to know that all the stories around that, but it seems like those kind of moves have really helped out.
I agree completely. And you let guys do what they do best. Steve Field, former high school coach down here at Miami Northwestern, also North Marion High School, played at the University of Miami back in the day. When he stopped coaching high school, his first job was at FAMU, I want to say, in the recruiting department. Then he went to Louisville in the recruiting department, and then he worked for Mario Cristobal at Oregon in, say it with me, the recruiting department. And then he left there and came back and coached the position that he played in tight ends. And then, he's going on in his career. He says, look, let me be the head person in charge of the recruiting department. You take Mike Rumpf, who I believe is better at building relationships than he showed in his time as the cornerbacks coach, but you have him be the relationship guy. And then you give other opportunities to guys to coach on the field and also take like the in-person lead of the recruiting apparatus. When you have smart moves like that, and you can lean back on a guy and say, okay, Steve Field has worked in the recruiting department or run recruiting departments at 3 other institutions before he came here. Mike Rumpf was a first-round NFL draft pick, and he's from here, he's from South Florida, played at Miami, all these things, and you're building relationships that way, and you're going around in a smart way in terms of what we do and how we do it in the world of recruiting, that aligned with, the coaching changes, like bringing in a Jamil Adai, who recruited at an elite level at Georgia and looks like he's heating up here. You bring in other guys to be able to do these kind of things. And then you just say, hey, we have Hall of Fame defensive end Jason Taylor as well. You want to go talk to him real quick? Yeah, these things are all holistically making the recruiting better.
Yeah, I think the apparatus is much more streamlined. Biggest thing for me, there are more relationship guys on the staff, more guys who are connected to this Hurricane program and Mario's vision. And I think when you talk about a Stephen Field, this is a guy that's coached with Mario before. You talk about a Rump who's been on basically every staff since he's been hired in the recruiting department. Other guys you bring in a Highsmith with like NFL assistant GM credentials. Plus, he was a Hurricane. You know what a Hurricane player should look like. There's a lot to like behind the scenes, but the biggest thing, Beast, with me is it's winning big games like you won on, Saturday afternoon. And that's what it's about. You can do all you want in recruiting. You can have NIL bags up to the sky. If you don't win and guys don't want to play for, bad teams, it does not matter. And I think that's the difference in what's changing.
When I wrote the recruiting rules, I wrote a feature in 2018, which is still up on stateoftheu.com, and you should check out. The last recruiting rule, number 9, was win. You have to have proof of concept, because you can talk a good game, right? You say, hey, come play here. We're going to do this. We're going to use you in this way. We're going to do all these things. But you keep going 5-7, 6-6. That's not going to work. You have to have wins on the field that are proof of concept. And even if the full game operation was not exactly what Mario Cristobal would have preferred, because he probably would have preferred to run for 400, throw for 200 something, and still win, right? But instead, you throw for almost 400, 5 touchdowns, you have a couple turnovers, you have, 10 penalties, some of which were super shenanigans from the referees, but whatever. But even with how the game went, it was not 100% the perfect vision of Mario Cristobal football. But even with that being said, he can point to this and say, this isn't even optimal operations. And we still whooped him out of the stadium. So now think about what happens when you come and join us.
And not only that, let me say this. With the recruits that you still want to have a shot at, namely Jeremiah Smith at Chaminade Madonna, who's a 5-star number 2 player in the country receiver who put up 316 yards in almost a half of play.
Craziness.
The way you won is so much more helpful because it looked electric, especially from the wide receiver position. You don't need any more running back recruits. You've already got those guys locked in. So the way you won helps you for the guy you still want.
Right, but also you need offensive linemen, because you play 5 of them at a time. You want to have 8 or 10 of them ready. So you look at the offensive line, look back again at that touchdown to Isaiah Horton. Tyler Van Dyke was back there baking a cake from scratch. I mean, he was back there, patted the ball a few times. He said, I'm going to wait for you to do okay, I'm going to finally throw the ball. Nobody got near him. That pop was perfect. If you look at some of these running plays, look, you're still getting pushed. Now, it wasn't 7 yards a carry, but against probably the best defensive line that Miami's going to face this year, they were still moving bodies, right? So, again, yeah, you have a great performance and you win in exciting fashion. You get one of the fastest players on the team with a 98-yard kick return. You had Xavier Restrepo blowing up the kicker on the way back. You can point to all the passing game. You can point to all these things. And for Mario, he's like, yeah, I want to still be bigger and stronger. But to the recruits, you still have something to sell. And again, it's not even peak Cristobal football, and we still blew them out.
Cam Underwood, managing editor of State of the U. Follow him on X at Underwood Sports. Cam, before we get you out of here, did I hear you're changing your prediction on the win total for the season? Did I catch a little 8-4 action, or
100%?
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. I was firmly 7-5 with this as a loss to Texas A&M, and along with that one click of the hype meter, I'm putting up one more win on the board. I'm updating my process and saying 8-4 with room to continue to grow. And the other part of my 7-5, which I even wrote on stateoftheu.com, which you should be following and reading every day, is 7-5 ... prove me wrong. Because I've been bought in before on the talent. I've been bought in before on the recruiting rankings. I've been bought in before on other things than demonstrable performance. And now I said, no, I'm going to take a measured look. I believe that there's 7 wins on this schedule and 5 losses. And if it's not going to be that, you're going to need to prove me wrong, Miami Hurricanes football team and Mario Cristobal as head coach. And on Saturday at Hard Rock Stadium, they took a big step towards proving me wrong. And I love being wrong when I undershoot things. But at this point, yeah, we're going to turn that up to 8-4 and then continue to move forward.
Cam, thanks so much for joining us, my man. We love reading your stuff at stateoftheu.com, following you at Underwood Sports, and most importantly, we love yucking it up with you in the press box, as the three of us have now become the old men from the Muppets.
Yeah, man. So we're doing all that, but it's great to talk to you guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Will do. We've got some more to discuss about this football team and this program. We will do that on the Real Ones Canes podcast right after this. Canes fans, the Real Ones Canes podcast is brought to you by Closure Investigative Agency, the premier private investigative firm in Florida. They're the most aggressive PI firm in South Florida. Ulises and his crew will get you the information you need and leave no stone unturned. They've been doing it for more than 2 decades, and there is no one else you should trust to find you the truth. Are you worried about a cheating spouse? Do you have a custody issue? Do you need a thorough background check done of a potential employee? Need an insurance or legal investigation done? Or even an international investigation that needs to happen? Closure Investigative Agency has you covered. Call Ulises and his staff right now at 844-403-2550. That's 844-403-2550. Or email them at info@ciagency.com and follow them on X at CIAPIFL. That's CIAPIFL. And find them on the web at ciagency.net. Closure Investigative Agency, sponsoring the Real Ones Canes podcast. Welcome back to the Real Ones Canes podcast. I'm the Beast, Brian London. My partner in crime is Brandon O'Doy. Follow me at Miami Radio Beast. Follow Brandon at Brandon_O'Doy. And follow the whole entire operation at Real Ones Canes. And please get the podcast wherever you get all your podcasts, Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and check out the YouTube channel as well. Brandon, I listened to a lot of the recap shows that a lot of the other guys put out about this program on Sunday. I was driving around Sunday, had a bunch of errands to do, listened to a bunch of podcasts. There is a lot of orange and green glasses on about this program. And listen, I don't want to discourage anyone. I don't want to take away from what was a really good victory, but I have 2 points. One, it's a long season. And even though maybe Clemson doesn't look great now, or North Carolina doesn't look great now, who knows what's going to happen a few weeks down the line. And the other thing is, do we know what Texas A&M is going to be at the end of the year? Could they go 5-7 again? Are they better? Are they not as good as we thought they were going to be, despite all of the talent they have? I think both of those things could be true. And I'm just saying, let's just take it 1 week at a time before we get ahead of ourselves.
I agree 1,000%. I'm definitely not ready to say this team's going to compete for a national championship or even an ACC championship, for that matter, because there are a lot of roadblocks on this schedule. A couple of things that I didn't care for as far as like getting too hype about things. Miami completely eliminated Texas A&M's downfield passing game the week before that looked unstoppable. And so was that just a fluke, or is Miami really legit on the back end? We're going to find out at UNC, because you've got a guy that's going to be a first-round pick whenever he comes out in Drake May. So that's still to come. Run game, I said it before. I'll say it again because it bears repeating. A little bit concerned about it, especially the health of Fletcher. You need that element of Fletcher and Parrish like you had in week 1 to provide the true threat that this offense needs. I like what Allen brought in late, but it still wasn't the same, and maybe you're going to see more of a shuffling with Allen, maybe not so much Don Chaney, because Allen kind of brought a little bit more of the up and down, north and south running that maybe a Fletcher gives you to Parrish's kind of flashing and getting to the outside. So, yes, I'm not ready to put on the orange and green at all as far as the shades are concerned. There are things to like, but definitely a few concerns out there and a few traps out there. And we're going to see what this depth looks like. And I'm excited to find out.
Yeah, listen, I've never been a part or covered a team at Miami that hasn't needed multiple running backs because of injuries. I mean, this goes back to Danielle Ferguson, having a major, almost life-threatening hip injury up at West Virginia, where literally he was taken, into the trauma unit, and Dr. Uribe performed surgery literally, within hours after that injury up in West Virginia. So bad things have happened to running backs, and that's across. I mean, look at what happened to Baltimore. They lost their starting running back. The Ravens did. Now we got Gus the Bus leading the way for the Ravens. It always happens with injuries. So that's why you need 3 or 4 of them, and that's why Miami has depth there. And you're right. You need to get Fletcher back. He's showing flashes as a freshman. And I think this team does still have areas to improve in, right? It's only the second game. Not everything is perfect. You got to make sure you can't have those breakdowns on special teams. You got to make sure that you're coaching up the kids to not maybe be overly aggressive where you're getting called on ridiculous penalties. You had a couple, I think, offsides penalties on Morogoa in this game, and he's just a freshman and getting used to it. So there's still stuff to get better at, and I think that's what behooves Mario Cristobal and his coaching staff, is that they can turn on the film, and despite the fact that it was a great win, there were still mistakes they got to correct and get better at.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great loss to have, a great win to have, rather, because you won convincingly, just like in Miami of Ohio, but there's a lot of things you can clean up. Offensively, you can do better in the run game. You can get the tight ends more involved. You can stop the silly penalties. There were a lot of, after the play penalties that Miami had to deal with, which is just a focus issue. And so at the end of the day, this is a team that is in a good position right now. The coaching staff can really show how good they can be, because now you've had a very difficult game. You're going to have some lesser games to kind of sink your teeth into and really show some skill and some acumen on moving some things around. Test your depth and get ready for the bulk of this schedule, the meat of this schedule, which is at UNC in 3 weeks.
Thanks to Cam Underwood from stateoftheu.com for joining us. Brandon, thanks so much as always. We will see you next time on the Real Ones Canes podcast. Don't forget, subscribe, download, give us good juju on all the comments. Push that thing up the charts, and we'd really appreciate it. And follow us on X at Real Ones Canes. We will see you next time on Real Ones Canes podcast.